for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio. I'm going to be honest with you folks. I'm not sure if y'all heard the intro or not. I forgot to load it over into the correct part of the Queen. I could barely hear something in the background, so I'm not sure if y'all picked up on it or not. And I do apologize if you didn't. Want to remind everybody that Talk Now Radio is listener-supported radio. The good news about that is that you don't have a big contributing sponsor that, hey, I don't like your show you got the material on today. I'm going to back out my payment if you do the actual show. Downside about that is, though, you have to make up what the, as a whole, all the listeners make up what the sponsors would have made up, or we can't afford to stay on the air. But we do cover a lot of material on this show that there are some parties out there that, if they were supporting us, would probably pull out. Some of the things I cover are like spirituality, sometimes rubs against the grain of the church, and people like Chick-fil-A, if they were a sponsor, would most likely pull out, just to give an example. So, your help is needed to keep this here show alive and on the air. We got a donation block up here in your upper right-hand side if y'all want to donate. Also, you can click on ads. And when I'm interviewing a guest, if you scroll down below the chat room, you'll see their picture and their description. You'll also see a link to their book. If you'll click on that link right down there underneath their description, it'll take you to Amazon where you can buy the book at, and I would get a commission off of that. I think it's like 10% or something. That also goes to help the show stay on the air. So don't go going directly to Amazon to get it. Get it through the links that you see on my website here. And that way you'll help us out. So, getting down to today's topic, 7 myths about love. Mike, are you with us?
I'm right here, Royce. Yeah, nice to talk to you.
Wanted to make sure you're where I left you.
Yeah.
So, you want to tell us a little something about yourself and what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I guess it kind of begins for me about 32 years ago now, when I woke up one day very stressed out. Kind of crept up on me very slowly, as it does, and you can tolerate so much for so long, but then it just kind of hit rock bottom for me, with not enjoying the journey and relationships not working very well, and it just made me stop, give up what I was doing, look outside and inside to see what I had to change. And I guess that's what happens for many of us, and when we do take a different fork in the road of our life.
Kind of like come to that crossroads you hear everybody talk about.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. You turn left or right, or you find a new way forward. And the first thing I kind of realized as I was looking outside and inside is the one thing no one ever teaches us, and that's something called self-understanding. And if I don't understand me, then I can't manage me, my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, etc. And if I can't manage me, then I can't manage the stuff around me, relationships, roles, responsibilities. And I realize this is the basis of my stress. And fundamentally at the heart of that is the belief that runs the world, basically, which goes like, it's not me, it's them. And this is the belief that other people are responsible for what I feel. And actually that's not true. It's always me that's responsible for what I feel, no matter what's going on around me. But that's really hard for most people to get, as I say, because the belief that you find in every context in the world is that other people are responsible for what we think and feel. So to cut a long story short, I kind of set off on my new direction at that point, and that led me about 10 years later to writing and teaching and workshops and so on. And then about 5 years after that, I got very interested in the whole concept of love, because I kept hearing the word being used very frequently, but I just didn't sense the presence of love around those who were using it, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And so I began to research then.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, you can hear people say all the time, so-and-so caused me to get mad. But then you got to ask yourself, did they really cause you to get mad, or did they just do something you didn't like and you chose to get mad about it?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. It's just that you don't choose at the time. You don't make the choice.
Or at least you don't consciously make it. You just
it's a reaction, basically.
Right.
And what they've done is triggered a reaction which is already recorded in your consciousness. And if you go to the very heart of that, you'll always find one thing, and it's they're not doing what I want. They're not being the way I want. They're not giving me what I want. And so it's just me not getting what I want. And that's always the case. No matter what the trigger is, it's always that at the root.
Now, that brings me to a question that just popped into my mind. Are there times when maybe that's they're not giving me what I need rather than what I want?
Well, that's another good question, but we get the two mixed up, I think, and it took me many years to kind of see this clearly for myself. But ultimately, I don't need anything or anyone. That's not to say that I go and live in a cave and cut myself off and so on. We need relationship, but I'm not needy in relationship. And so there's a difference between the two. And of course, we don't go around saying, I need relationship. Relationship is life. It's there. You can't escape it. If you did go and live in a cave, you'd still have people in your head that you were relating to. And so it's not that there's no relationship. It's just that neediness in relationship disappears when you realize who you are. And that's the crux. Put it like this, my body needs something. My body needs food, shelter, water, clothing. And it's my job to give my body to that. Notice I'm using my and body. So who's saying my? That's me, the spiritual being that I am. And so I, as a spiritual being, don't need anything. If anything, I don't need to get, it's to give of myself. And so you see the two energies, physical and spiritual. The body's physical. It needs to consume energy and food, light, water, air. It needs to take in. But consciousness, the soul, spirit, whatever you call the I that says I am, if I have a need, it is to give of myself, to give out, not take in. And that's what's missed by most people, because we just identify with our body, and therefore we think we have needs. And that's a huge mistake.
I've often wondered, Mike, at what point do people start identifying with their body, or has it always been pretty much that way?
Well, in terms of, when you're born, I mean, you're totally conditioned that way when you arrive by people who are already identifying with their body. So they just pass on that essential mistake. But if you're looking at it in the longer view of history, then there was a point, I sense, kind of intuitively, and I understand that there was a point where we lived in our physical, energetic bodies, but we didn't identify with them. We knew, in a sense, intuitively, not rationally, but intuitively, they were just vehicles, they were just costumes, and that we were the animators and occupiers of these costumes, but we were not them. It would have been a time of a higher consciousness, and this is where it gets a bit challenging, because people tend to look at the past and see consciousness as being lower. But if you apply one simple principle of life to that idea, it takes you the other way. And the idea is that nothing becomes new. Everything becomes old. It goes from new to old. Nothing in the world goes the other way naturally. And so it's the same with consciousness. If consciousness is now old, what was it like when it was new? Well, it would have been a higher vibration, a higher level of consciousness, a level of consciousness that hadn't yet fallen into body consciousness, if that makes sense.
Well, actually it does. I've actually had thoughts before about the Garden of Eden story,
yeah,
and how it could really be allegorical of the spirit actually entering the body and taking on the five senses.
That's it. That's exactly it, yeah. But that's very difficult for your scientists today who preach evolution, and it's very different from some religious people who just, they don't want to see the spiritual dimension of the process. They really just want to worship an iconic idea of an idealistic way of living. And so that stops them from realizing their own spirituality in that sense.
Now, real quick, like, before I forget, again, I meant to tell everybody, if y'all got questions, call in at 832-632-7904, or feel free to type them into the chat room that's right below the player. And also, if you want to learn more about Mike or his books, you can go to www.mythsoflove.com. Okay, now coming back to the topic at hand, are there exactly 7 myths in this here book, or was 7 kind of like a rounded off figure, kind of like the perfect number of God?
Yes. Yeah, good question. I tend to use the number 7 a lot because it for me, it kind of symbolizes creativity. It's the creative number. And many people ask me why, and I say quite simply, if you use that number for anything, 7 ways to wear a hat, 7 ways to sit in a chair, 7 dimensions of love, or whatever, it challenges you to be creative and not just think in one dimension, if you like. So there are more than 7 myths about love, that's for sure. But I think I kind of highlighted the main 7 that stalk the world today. And that's really what the book is built around, is those basic 7 myths.
Okay, so there's going to be room for another book on it in the future if you want.
Yeah, yes, for sure.
Well, I don't think you can really just go down the list of each and every myth without giving away the whole candy store, so to speak. But what do you think you can safely tell us?
Well, I mean, the book is about the 7 myths, but it's also a lot more than that. It also sets up why we have this mythology globally now around this particular subject. It goes into what we were talking about before, our sense of identity, and it goes into the whole territory of emotional confusion. When we don't know love, then emotion arises, and one of the myths is that love is just another emotion. And of course it's not. It's the highest vibration of consciousness. And when the self, when you and I are in our highest vibration, then we are not emotional. There is the presence of no emotion. So it goes into untangling the difference between feelings and emotions, which is very seldom looked at, even in spiritual context.
So love as emotion might be something more akin to an ego-driven love versus a spirit-driven love, which would be more devoted to caring?
Yeah, I don't kind of separate a little bit like that. I mean, one of the faces of love, one of the expressions of love or pure intentions of love is to care. So when you're genuinely caring without wanting anything in return, then that's you acting as love. It's not something separate. You are the vibration of love in that moment. But the problem is that we've been just brilliantly conditioned to want something back, to expect something back. And of course, we say we need something back, but that need is really want, justified by the word need. And so whenever we want something back, however subtle, then the vibration of our consciousness comes down, and we're not being love, which is what we are essentially in our purest state. And so that's where it gets a little bit subtle. And emotion enters the picture because emotion is essentially an agitation of our consciousness. And when your consciousness is agitated, then it's not in its highest state, which is non-agitated. It's just pure, unblocked energy of consciousness. But emotion happens when you block the energy of your consciousness with some kind of attachment. And that's what distorts, deviates the vibration of you. And then love is temporarily lost, if you know what I mean.
So then pain that's caused by other people would naturally play a role in this.
No, you realize that pain is not caused by other people, it's caused by the self. Probably a good distinction required here is pain is physical, and suffering is optional. Pain is physical and suffering is emotional and mental. So if we separate the two, pain will inevitably happen some stage to your body, or through your body you'll feel physical pain. But suffering is emotion and certain kinds of thinking, and they're both very much connected. And so all suffering is self-created, because each one of us is responsible for our thoughts and our emotions, 100%.
And our perceptions?
Perceptions as well, absolutely. Your perceptions too. You are the creator of your perception. As you perceive, so you create. So as you see someone, you are perceiving them, you are creating them in your consciousness. And it comes through the filter of your perception. That filter is made up with your beliefs, your experiences, but essentially it's still your creation.
Well, we got my wife and a listener, Stanley, in the chat room, and they must be going on this here thing about all great mind thinks alike, because my wife was saying earlier, what's love got to do with it? It's just a secondhand emotion. And this Cajun ghost hunter pops up in there, and the first thing he says, it's a secondhand emotion.
Yes. I think that's found in a song somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's why the great minds are thinking alike.
Yeah. It's a bit like that song, and one of the myths in the book is love hurts. I'm sure you've heard that song.
I've heard of it, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great illusion. Again, you watch the couple in the restaurant, they have a little tiff, 10 minutes later they're starting to argue, 20 minutes later one storms up and storms out, and another couple are watching them, and what do they say? Oh, they're having a little lover's tiff. They must be so much in love. And in reality, both are hurting. And then we say love hurts. And so actually the truth is that love never hurts. If it hurts, it's not love. It's emotion. And that's why love is the healing energy, not the hurting energy of our consciousness.
Well, it sounds like a lot of what's being talked about here goes back to identification and misidentification that's confusing people.
Oh, totally. That's the root cause. Our old friend, the ego. The moment you become attached to anything, and attachment doesn't happen externally, attachment is created in your own mind. The moment you lose your sense of self in what's on your mind, an image of another person, a belief, a memory, and then that's the moment of attachment. And the moment of attachment signals misidentification. You lose your sense of self in what's on your mind. And then if something happens on the outside to what that idea represents, then it feels like it's happening to you, and you react. And that's exactly how the world globally is operating right now. Everybody's
which explains about things that are sentimental to people, and the
exactly.
the way people can freak out when something happens to these sentimental atoms.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's a great example. Because
you, the person, actually place the importance on them.
Yep.
But that was my grandmother, so therefore it's very highly important, and if something happens to it, I am gonna...
Exactly.
And the self-fulfilling prophecy fulfills.
That's it. And then you react emotionally, and that's suffering. There's your suffering. Totally self-created. If the other person steals the object that Granny loved and which I now value so much, if someone steals that and I react, then we project onto the person who steals it how we feel, not realizing actually it's me that's creating this suffering. And what's been stolen is just an object. It's just a piece of matter. It's material. And so everything in the material world comes and goes in some way or other. So when I realize that reality, then I free myself from suffering. I detach, if you like. Not that I don't care. That's not the same as not caring. It's being able to step back and not lose my sense of self in something that I'm not.
Kind of like giving it a different special place than identifying it with you.
Exactly. That's it.
Because you always got to bear in mind that nothing lasts forever, like you said. Yeah, because there is, you see it around you every day, strong attachments being placed on things, either for sentimental reasons or for reasons of monetary value, or it was worked hard for. People take this stuff and they get really personal with it. They form attachments with dogs and cats, and then these things end up being sources of suffering later on.
That's right. Well, that's where all suffering comes from, some kind of attachment, which is essentially almost the same as the ego. The ego attachment, it happens in the same moment in that sense. And then people say, but I value the cat, I value the car, I really value those things. And here's another confusion, an illusion, is we get value and attachment mixed up. Is that when you value something, you give to. I give you value. I give the person value. I'm giving of myself towards the object or the situation that I say I value. Whereas attachment is I'm trying to take something from, not give to. So I'm trying to take and possess and own. And that's where it kind of goes wrong. Because
that sounds almost like a form of lust.
Well, yeah, that's where lust comes from too. Lust is just an extreme form of attachment, which gives a very specific sensual experience. And that sensual experience then becomes a memory, and then I become addicted and I want to repeat the memory. I want that stimulation, just like a drug addict wants more of their drug. It's just such an incredibly focused, sensual thrill. And as long as I think I'm just the body, then I'll always crave more of some physical, sensual thrill.
It's starting to sound a lot more like the song Love is a Rose, I think was by Dolly Parton. You lose my love when you say the word mine. Lust and an attachment. You're getting down to me, mine, my.
Yes.
It sounds like there's something to that song there.
As long as you hear the word my or mine, either in your own mind or someone else says it, then this is the flag, this is the signal that there is attachment, and therefore unhappiness is either a few seconds away, or the rest of your life away, essentially.
Could be 20 years down the road.
Yes.
When me and my wife were dating 27 years ago, we went to a bingo game, and I tried to win her a pillow that had a throw cushion that had a heart embroidered on it with buttons filling it up all nice and shiny, and somebody else won it, so I thought it was smart and clever to offer them $10 for the pillow. And they took it, and I gave it to them. Boy, this really impressed my wife.
Yeah.
But then she formed that attachment you're talking about, and I love my pillow.
Yeah, that's it, yes.
Now, it's still in good shape 27 years later, but I'm sure if the dog gets in there and tears it up, that suffering is going to come in.
You'd be in trouble. The wife would be in trouble for sure. Yeah, I get that. That's when we use the word love. I love that pillow. I love that car. I love my garden. I love my house. So we're using the word love, but we really mean something else. But we don't realize, we're not aware that we mean something different. Because no one teaches us. It's just not part of our education.
Well, I've heard of ancient spiritual teachers talking in the past about not owning anything here on earth or not possessing anything here on earth, that it's far better to be considered that you're merely using it or borrowing it here on earth.
That's it. It's a shift in consciousness. I mean, most people hear the word detachment and they think, oh, no, it means losing, or I don't care, or I have to avoid things, and it doesn't mean that at all. Detachment just means changing your relationship with the object of attachment in your own consciousness. And with objects themselves, with physical objects, I shift my relationship from believing that I am the owner or the possessor to realizing I'm just a trustee, a temporary trustee of whatever's come into my life now. And all of that could leave at any moment, and I have no control over that. So I have it in trust. I have this object in trust and that object in trust. So that in my consciousness, I'm not possessing, owning anymore. And that's a good example of detachment in our relationship with objects. It's harder with people, but you know why the surgeon's not allowed to operate on their own family? It's because family is the deepest habit of attachment. My family, they're mine. But in reality, no one's mine. Nothing belongs to me. No one belongs to me. And if we all really got that, then the crying and the wailing and the sorrow that follows the apparent loss of someone would end. But that's so challenging for most of us because of our conditioning.
So you think that perhaps if people, thought about it in the terms you're speaking of, then it could alleviate a lot of grieving at funerals, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Grief would not be necessary. But people like the idea of grief too. They believe, well, it's healthy to grieve. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm not saying any emotion, fear, anger, sadness, they're not good or bad, but understand how I create them. It's not the event, it's not the death that is making me sad. It's my relationship with what is left, with who has died, that is the cause of my sadness. And if my relationship was one of possession, of being dependent on them for how I feel about myself, then I'm bound to feel as a result, as a price that I pay, if you like, some kind of sadness, some kind of grief. But ultimately, from a spiritual point of view, you can't possess anything, so you can't lose anything. So if you really get that, then sadness becomes impossible, absolutely impossible.
Well, I can tell you from a common sense standpoint, obvious to anybody, you can't really possess anyone or anything for any real longevity. I mean, sure, 40, 50 years, don't get me wrong, but eventually the person you're trying to possess is going to die, or you're going to die, and at that point, whichever one that goes with, there's going to be a separation.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. And that's inevitable, and it is reality. And it's not just a reality at the end of 50 years. In all our lives, the reality is, if you step back and watch, everything comes and goes. Objects, jobs, money, opportunities, even thoughts, feelings, attitudes, they all come and go. They all come to pass. And if you can sit and watch that, be the observer of that, then you're learning to not be affected when things have their moment to leave. Everything and everyone has their moment to leave. And so if you get that, then it's not a problem. That's one of the reasons why meditation has been practiced in the East for 2,000 years. Is the first step of meditation is detached observation, is watching from an observer's point of view everything coming to pass, and pass it does. Pass they do. And when you can do that in a practiced way in every situation, then it doesn't matter what happens around you, it won't surprise you and it won't disturb you.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to mention to you, is that I'm sure it's going to be very hard for anybody that reads your book to say, okay, I'm going to start trying this. I'm going to do the detachment. And many of them will probably want to, but when it actually comes time, when something, gets destroyed or somebody dies or something, time to act becomes a whole totally different story. Do you have any recommendations for these situations?
Yes. Yeah, learn to meditate. Learn about yourself through a process of meditation and contemplation. This is the big hole in the middle of all our educations. We've been stuffed full of information and other people's beliefs, and we've never received or given ourselves the chance to create our own realizations, because the wisdom we need is already existent within our consciousness. We just need to sit and listen to ourselves. But to do that, I have to quieten the noise of all that information, all those beliefs. I have to challenge some of those beliefs, and the main belief that stops us from waking up and realizing our own truth is that our happiness comes from outside. Our happiness comes from other people and situations and the movie and the ice cream and the chocolate. But I have to realize that that's not real happiness. It's just temporary stimulation. And if I can realize that true happiness is something that I generate from inside out, then I begin my journey. I begin to free myself from my dependencies, my attachments around me. But it's a challenge. It's a real challenge because our conditioning is so deep. And just to finish, we have the two best teachers in the world of these illusions, and those teachers are Hollywood and Bollywood. Everything they produce contains the illusion that life is lived from outside in. But the reality is, it's inside out.
Now, yeah, that's the very key right there. I think I would tend to agree with you on that is, when do you actually get to that point? And I think meditation is probably the route, and part of what's going on in today's world is kids just are not encouraged to meditate anymore.
No, not in our technological age. Everything is at hyper speed now. We live in the age of distraction, basically. Everyone's addicted to some kind of distraction, fast, speediness, and that's the effect of technology. Essentially, technology is just consciousness in machines. You know, all the technology is just replicating the functions of human consciousness. Imagination, images, rewind, memory. You've got action replay. You've got visualization on the screen. And everything we do in our consciousness is done for us by technology. So it makes us lazy, and so that eventually our own creation, our own mental creation, becomes lazy, and ultimately becomes quite negative because we're losing our power of creativity to our very slick and very speedy machines. So it's having a not such a good effect on the world. But don't tell that to most kids today.
Yeah, I noticed that. It does seem to fulfill a temporary place in most of the young's heart that they think is happiness. And boy, let the roaches get inside that machine and it quits working. It just ruins their whole entire day.
That's right. Yes, I watch people in seminars actually, and half the time they've got their iPhone or phone under the desk and they're texting away. And sometimes when they look under, they look at me for a while and they listen for a while and they look under to see if they've got any messages. And sometimes you can just see on their face there's just 2 lines of a text, and they're devastated for the next hour. Or some people, they look down and you can tell that there's no messages, and so they're very disappointed for the next 10 minutes. So the emotions that they're generating is so tied to these little handheld gadgets. Through which they're receiving information from thousands of people, thousands of miles away. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. But it's life. It's the way it is. So, hey.
Yeah, you can walk into almost any restaurant and you'll see people sitting at the tables texting while they're eating.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And people don't even talk anymore. They'd rather type.
That's right. There's a lovely group of teenagers sitting on top of a mountain with this most beautiful vista. They've obviously spent hours climbing to the peak, and the scenery around them is stunning. And all 4 of them are sitting in a circle, looking at their phones and texting like crazy. So yeah, it's many paradoxes.
And the ancients, they used to believe that you could communicate telepathically.
That's
and
right,
I wonder what that would do for the messaging business if that was reinstituted.
Well, I mean, the reason we have this now, we have this technology connecting us all up in many ways, is because we've lost the ability to connect with each other at the most subtle level. And this is another bit of evidence for me that what's new becomes old, is that I suspect that in the past, and this would be back in your Garden of Eden, Atlantis, Dreamtime period, that people communicated very subtly through their vibrations. And one particular spiritual practice is being able to connect soul to soul. In India, they call it drishti. And essentially, you sit in silence with the other person, and you connect your consciousness with their consciousness. And it's a meditative practice. And it's not that you're hearing words or sentences, but you're connecting your vibration with their vibration. And this, for me, is the subtle level that our consciousness can go to. And that's what we've lost. We come down into words. Technology comes down into the crudest form of energy and starts making the words into packets of data. And so now we're just swapping data with each other. We started with wisdom, then it became knowledge, then it became information, and now it's data. So communication, for me, it's entropy. It's a process of entropy in the past 2,000 years.
Yeah, that's interesting because entropy seems to affect everything in the actual material realm, in other words.
It does, and it's fairly obvious once you see it, and that's why if you talk to an evolutionist and you ask them the question, well, what do you do with entropy in the context of evolution? Because evolution points towards the idea that we're progressing, things are getting better, we're becoming better, our consciousness is becoming higher. But if you put entropy next to that, then it's very difficult to explain. And one of the ways I understand it is that entropy in matter, in the material world, takes place when the energy of matter goes from order to chaos, when it goes from form into formlessness, when it escapes into chaos. Wood goes into heat and light. You can never get it back without taking more energy. The entropy of consciousness goes in the opposite direction, because the entropy of consciousness is designed to be formless. And what we do, we try to give the energy of our consciousness form. And we do that in our minds by getting attached to something. And so when you get attached to an idea or an image in your mind, you're trying to give form to the energy of your consciousness, thought form. You give your thoughts, your vibration form, and then you try and hold on to them. And that's when you suffer. That's when the emotion arises, when something happens to what you've given form to. So entropy in consciousness is slightly the opposite from the entropy of matter. But the entropy of matter is caused by the entropy of consciousness because emotion is addictive. And that's why some countries, some cultures, they run on emotion now. And Hollywood know this. They tap into this. They exploit your emotions to get your money. So we pay for something to stimulate our emotions, and we need more energy to give us more stimulation. Where do we get the energy? We get it from matter. And so we have to release more energy from forms of matter to sustain our addiction to our own emotions. So it's that kind of cycle. And so until we wake up and stop trying to attach, hold on, and create emotion in our consciousness, then the entropy of matter is just going to continue, and global warming, climate chaos, all of that's just going to keep going.
Oh, rage.
Yeah, that's it. You got it, rage. And the world is raging now. And if you tell people not to rage or that rage is a bad thing, they get even more rageous. What do you mean? I need to be angry. This is an angry world. So they try and justify their anger.
That reminds me of a picture I saw of a baby with one heck of a angry, screaming-looking face on Facebook, and it said, "No, I don't need anger management. I just need you to quit pissing me off."
That's it. You got it. There's the essence. Fantastic.
But that is the way that people do think nowadays.
And
they never really realize that the person outside them they think is making them angry never had the ability to make them angry in the first place,
That's it.
Much less the ability to make them unangry.
Exactly. That's really tough to realize. It just shows you how asleep, we collectively are. And I still make that mistake. I've been sort of working on myself, if you like, or what you say, waking up to the deeper realities for 30 years, and I still fall into that trap. It's so deeply conditioned, and it's all around us in society, all the time, every day. Someone else is making me feel. It's tough.
Which is also exactly why people can go out and kill somebody for revenge and still be angry.
Yeah, that's it. Doesn't satisfy anything. That's it.
Because you can only satisfy yourself from within yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, my wife was asking, when someone dies, do they carry your love with them to the next level?
Well, there's a question in the question, and the question is, can you ever carry someone else's love? Which really means, can you carry the other self? because the self is love, essentially. It's just the highest vibration of the spiritual energy of consciousness that we are. And so you don't carry another person. You might carry a memory of the other, but the memory is not them. And that's tricky too to get. So you remember your father, you have a memory of your father, he's long died. So you have the memory, and the memory triggers you to raise your vibration. Oh, my father, yeah, well, there was such a lovely relationship. We just gave each other our best. And so you raise your vibration, but it's your vibration that you're feeling and not the father's love. It's the memory that's triggering you to raise your vibration. And so it's impossible to carry someone else with you, in my humble opinion, because we're all unique. We're all totally individual and unique. But you can carry the memory. So when someone dies, for me, the right way to see them off is to give them your highest vibration, not hold on to them and try and keep them and cry because they've gone, but to give them your good wishes, your blessings, your highest level of consciousness. And that helps to release them from you, because their consciousness is probably still a bit attached to you. And if you give someone your blessing, hey, go for it, great, enjoy your next chapter, your next adventure, then you're letting them go, and that's a great act of love. You are vibrating as love in that moment. But most people are, no, please, I can't live without you, please come back, I wish you had come back, I wish you hadn't gone. So you're sending that soul a downer, if that's the right way to say it. Not right or wrong, it's just a down energy, a downer vibration, and you're trying to keep them trapped in you. And that's how most people, unfortunately, because of our conditioning, respond to someone.
A kind of a lasso energy there that is, wraps it around them and tries to hold them back where they can't get all the way into heaven.
Well, they can't get all the way onto the next chapter. Yeah, exactly. And whatever that chapter is, new life, new birth, new role, whatever, it's like you're holding them back from them flowing into their next adventure. I like to use the word adventure, basically, but I don't really do heaven after I don't really get the heaven up there, hell down here. I think both are here. That life is hell at the moment because everyone's consciousness is so locked into a paradigm that says, you make me suffer. And so we make ourselves suffering, and so hell is just a place where everyone's suffering. And for me, the way I kind of see it now is everyone's suffering. There's moments of relief from the suffering when you have the chocolate, you have your favorite coffee, or you go to the movie, but they're drugs, and those drugs just delay the next moment of suffering. And so hell is human suffering. And so heaven is liberation from that suffering. And so that's what the world is kind of waiting for now. That's what we as a world community is waiting for. Those who awaken consciously from self-created suffering, and they stop blaming, they stop complaining, they stop pointing the finger at others. And when we all stop doing that, then we will have heaven amongst us. That's why I think heaven is within. But that's me. I don't know, but everyone's got a different point of view.
Well, actually, Jesus
story.
Seemed to have the same point of view you got.
I think so. Similar, yeah, I think so. I didn't meet him.
I think you said the kingdom of heaven is within you and without.
That's the idea.
That was in Luke, I believe. I read that.
That's it, exactly. But of course, that to resurrect, if that's the right word, that consciousness, because he's really pointing at a state of consciousness, I have to get out of the way what's in the way. And what's in the way are the habits of blaming, complaining, criticizing, projecting, violating. These are inclinations we've all learned because of our attachments.
Now, our show, we got 15 minutes remaining in the show, so real quick, I want to give you an opportunity to tell us anything about your book that I didn't think to cover. No, cover.
No, we've covered it and a lot more. I mean, essentially, all the books that I write, to be perfectly honest, I write for myself. it's not selfish. It's just that when I write, it's my way of studying these things, of understanding, of dredging up deeper realizations. Because everything that I'm saying now, that's in that book, that is in all the books of wisdom, each one of us already knows. It's just reconnecting with that level of awareness within ourselves. And so what the first thing that goes awry for all of us is what you mentioned earlier, is this misidentification, and you can't really set off on any spiritual journey until there is the realization that I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who I was told I was. I'm not an identity based in the world. And so the first chapter of just about every book I do has to cover that, because that's the first hurdle, is this idea that, we're not what we see in the bathroom mirror in the morning. That's just a form, it's just a dwelling, it's just a vehicle. But the consciousness, the self, the I that says I am, is what I am. That's all. Anything after I am is not me. It's an idea, and I'm not an idea. I'm me. So the spiritual journey is the realization of that. And once you get that, then everything tends to kind of fall into place. You start to see and realize everything differently.
Is it kind of like I am, I exist, period, nothing else after?
Yeah, a little bit like that. It's just, everything else does exist, but you cease to attach to it and identify with it. You realize that, I guess as the Buddhists sometimes say, that everything except the self is temporary, it's passing, it's transient. And so therefore, against the reality of consciousness, of the self, of the soul, of me, against that reality, it's unreal. It's real, but it's not to be taken at the same level of reality that you and I are as spiritual beings, as spiritual energy. But it's tough again, because the whole world is waiting for us to step out every day, and this whole industry is designed to make us identify with what we're not. The car, the fashion, the brand, the service, the company, the nation, the national philosophy, the politics, everyone's screaming for us.
Patriotism.
Yes, religion, the whole gambit. Please attach to and identify with us, with this. And of course, it's tough to break that habit. It's our programming.
And then you're considered weird if you try to break the programming. I mean, you hear people all the time, what are you, unpatriotic? Or
yeah, it's exactly.
Why, aren't you religious?
That's it.
So there's something becomes wrong with you if you try to unplug.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't really go around talking about it too much because it just presses other people's buttons. If you say that I'm not my nationality to a nationalist, then you'll press their button and they'll just get all grumpy and upset, and they'll attribute their grumpiness to you, because they've still got to get that it's me and not you, and they're still identifying with an idea, because nationality is just an idea. That's all it is. Someone came along a few hundred years ago and said, let's label this country France, let's label this one Canada, and it's just a label, and I'm not a label. And so it's the realization of what I'm not that also helps you to realize what you are. And once you strip away everything you're not, that's a bit frightening for some people, then you're left with nothing, no thing. And then you're beginning to exist as you are. And people say, well, wait a minute, if I do that, I'll lose my identity, I'll lose my sense of identity. And what they don't realize is they've been losing their identity in 100 different ways every day already.
They've never had their identity, it'd be more like.
Exactly. You got it.
Well, yeah, and, I think in a lot of cases, a lot of people don't realize that when you have Israel over here, France over here, Germany over there, USA over here, you got different places you can hate because they're different.
Exactly, that's it.
But if you only had one humanity,
yep,
is everybody really still so different, or have you removed the illusion of difference?
Yeah, and then, when you have one humanity, we start looking at each other with a different vision. Then you start looking at each other as not human forms, but beings of consciousness. We are beings in different shaped forms. But as beings, we're all the same. Not identical. We use what we have within us differently. You know, it's like in the physical world, there's 3 colors, and you mix those colors to get all the other colors. In the spiritual consciousness, the being, the soul, whatever name you want to give the self, you have the capacity to mix your 3 colors: peace, love, and joy. These are the 3 primary vibrations of consciousness. And so when there's no attachment, you have the ability to mix those 3 vibrations in your own unique way. So we're all the same, we're all spiritual beings, but we mix our attributes, our spiritual attributes, differently. And that's what makes us such a beautiful group, community in the world. That's why you never meet 2 people exactly the same. It's amazing, really, when you look at it. But we don't kind of get that. As soon as you get attached to something, then you bring your vibration out of peace, out of love, out of joy, and it becomes fear. Fear of loss or sadness after loss or anger. You blame someone for taking away what you thought was yours. And so the vibration comes down into those emotions. And then you have conflict, basically, and that's where it comes from.
Then again, a lot of people don't recognize the fear that they have. And some of them, they might recognize some of their fears, but I think few really realize how many fears they do have because they are so subtle.
Yeah, they are subtle because of many of those attachments are very subtle. And so the spiritual journey, if there is such a thing, it's not a physical journey. The journey of waking up to who you really are is a progressive process of noticing the subtlety of the things you're attached to and the suffering you cause yourself because of that attachment. And it's like layers. It's like an onion. It's like many layers in an onion. And you're working your way through those layers. You think you've finished your sadness, and suddenly there's another layer that's more subtle. You're absolutely right. And that is a characteristic of waking up.
The thing is, you don't have maybe a handful of people in the world that are on a path to waking up. And, you know, you got a lot of writers like yourself that's putting this material out there, but it doesn't seem like it's having much effect, does it?
Well, I think one of the things you realize is that to make the journey it's as much an incognito thing. I think, you know, the ones that you hear about aren't really the ones who are probably doing the deepest and most profound work, you know, which puts me in a bit of an interesting camp, because here I am on the surface talking in a very kind of superficial medium about very deep things. And I think there's a lot of people doing deep work in themselves, but you just don't hear about them. They don't talk about it. You know, there's an old saying, those who say don't know, those who know don't say. I don't know if you've heard that before. It's like the one who's doing their deep work inside. You know, they can't talk about this. You just have to get on with your own awakening. And then if someone asks, then you're available. But if they don't ask, you just get on with it, basically.
You put it out there and kind of let time take care of it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, ultimately that, you know, you're in exactly where you are, where you're meant to be at every moment. You know, everything's happening, everything's arising in the world exactly as it's meant to in the moment. So you get to that space inside yourself. You don't want anything from the world outside, but you still play in the world. You still go to work. You still pay your bills. You still engage with people. But inside, you're free. You're a freer spirit. You don't want or need anything from anyone. So you're able to give more. And when you start reversing the energy from wanting to giving, then that lifts you. It gives you a lift upwards in your consciousness. But you don't need to talk about it. Talking about it probably means you're not doing it. You just is about doing it. Walking the talk, as they say. Living it, yeah, that's it, living it.
You know, it kind of makes me think about some of these doctors from the Near and Middle East area. You see them in the hospitals from time to time.
Yeah.
I swear you could talk to them and insult them and call them anything.
Yeah.
And they just laugh and smile, and
Wonderful.
They don't even seem to care or notice that they've been insulted.
Wonderful, because they are serving. They're of service to others. And And this is really the great purpose of our life now is to find our way of serving. And everyone's got their own unique way of serving. But it's hard if you've been programmed to believe that life is about survival. If you live in a survival mindset, you won't be able to reverse your energy towards service, because one is taking and holding and keeping, and the other one is giving, releasing, sharing. And so it's this shift in consciousness that I guess the world is waiting for. And those doctors you're referring to, they are the classic example of walking the talk. Except they don't talk about it, they just do the walk. And perfect.
Of course, it's natural for them because they were brought up in the East where the meditation and that is still taught.
Very much so. And of course, or it could be a soul that's taken birth in the West, and they've brought that sort of impulse with them that hasn't been programmed out of them. And so they found their way towards a profession, an occupation, where they're able to express the caring, the giving, the serving. And so they found their way into medicine, which is, in the world today, probably one of the highest vocations, where you serve others. But on the other side of the coin, the medical profession in many parts of the Western world, you know, the doctors, the nurses who started off wanting to serve have forgotten that vocation, that natural giving. And now they're lost in their position, their structure, their organization. They're lost in the material survival of this material world. So they lose that ethic. They lose that sense of, I'm here to serve. And so it's extreme situations like the Middle East that sometimes brings it back out of them, because they see other people in such a predicament. They need that help so much that it draws that impulse to serve back out from within the soul. It's very interesting.
Okay, now I'm showing we got 3 minutes left real quick. I want to remind everybody that you can learn more about them by going to www.mistoflove.com. And if you scroll down below his picture and his description there, I got a link to Amazon where you can buy his book. Please shop through the link instead of going directly to Amazon, since I do get an affiliate fee for it, if you don't mind the shameless plug. And folks, this coming Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time, I'll be interviewing Frank Joseph once again, and we're going to talk about the lost colonies of ancient America. Would love to have everybody here. Please invite your friends, and let's fill up the chat room and have a good time. And then next Thursday at 1 p.m. on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, I'll be interviewing Robert Foreman again, and we're going to be talking about his book, Enlightenment Ain't What It's Cracked Up to Be, which I recently did him here on this here show, and he wanted to come over to the other show as well. And then Saturday, I'm going to be talking to Amit Osman, and I might be pronouncing his name off a little bit, about the lost city of the Exodus. And that's Saturday at this same time you're here right now. And he's uncovered a lot of archaeological finds that shows where the actual Israelites came out of Egypt at, along with some other interesting facts of Moses' connection to Akhenaten that a lot of people are unaware of, that you guys might want to listen in for. In the meantime, y'all have a good weekend, what's left of it. I want to thank y'all for coming, and I couldn't have a show with my listeners any more than I could without a guest, so if you listen, you did participate, and I do appreciate it, and I hope to see y'all here next Wednesday night. And did you have any final words for us, Mike?
Oh, just thanks for the opportunities, Royce. Nice to connect with you for the first time. And if any one of your listeners has any question, if they do send them in to you, please forward them on to me. I'd be very happy to respond in the best way that I can. Thanks a lot, Royce.
Oh, I'll be more than happy to do that. And you got an open door on my show. All you got to do is let me know when you got something you want to come on and talk about.
Fantastic. I might take you up on that.
That sounds like a winner to me. And with that, I'm going to say good night, or good day, everybody, and I'll see you Wednesday.